Oh, clickbait Tony Northrup with our DSLRs dead.
That's true.
Let's see if he has any sources this time.
We do. We have so many charts and graphs. Welcome to the Picture This Photography Podcast, where we cover all things photography, and it's free, and you can get this podcast on any podcasting app. You can also leave a review. I won't argue with that one.
Unless it's bad.
And today we're going to be talking about, are DSLRs dead?
People have been predicting it forever, right? Mirrorless and all their benefits are definitely going to take over.
Yeah, definitely. And then an article just came out.
Imaging Resource did this interview with the Pentax, one of the head guys at Pentax, and he actually said that he expects a lot of mirrorless shooters to go back to shooting DSLRs in a couple of years.
Yeah, people gave him a lot of flack in the comments. I gave him a little flack in my mind because I'm slightly more polite, but it didn't seem that likely when I first read the headline. I mean, mirrorless has so many advantages. You have the electronic viewfinder, you have more frames per second. They're just a ton of
silent shooting, eye detect autofocus, more flexible lens designs thanks to the flange distance and the bigger opening, smaller body. It seems like better tech, right?
Yeah, I thought.
But, and we'll get to that in just a second.
But first, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you need a website, domain, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace. Did I mention they have beautiful award-winning designer templates, Tony?
I don't think you've ever mentioned that
No, this
before.
isn't some amateur hour crap, okay? This is pro. You're gonna look good. And you can try it for free today for 14 days. You just need to go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off.
Unless you agree with me and my ridiculous stance, in which case you can use the coupon code Tony, just to give me a sense of confidence that I clearly lack.
If you need it, fine.
Thank you, Squarespace. First, can we just back up and establish something that me as an old graybeard nerd has learned the hard way? New, better tech does not always overtake old, worse tech.
Well, that's kind of what I assumed. So coming into this, I felt pretty sure mirrorless was going to just completely take over and dominate and kill DSLRs because everyone seems to think the tech is newer and better, and that just seems like the intuitive, natural progression to me.
So let's look at music media, right? We had records, and then there was 8 tracks, and then everybody had cassette tapes like when I was a teenager, and then CDs came out, and they were just definitely better. And then what happened after that? Well, of course, the revolution that was DVD audio and the big battle between DVD audio and super audio CDs, SACDs, and big companies poured millions and millions of dollars into getting their CD format to take over. And the music was clearer and you could store more data on it, and it was going to be the next big thing. And yeah, sure enough, I updated the head in my Honda Prelude to get that DVD audio in there because I was so excited about it. But what could you possibly play a DVD audio today?
I have no idea what super audio CD is.
Right. But you know CDs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, most new cars still have a CD player in them.
Do they?
They do. Our new car has a CD player in it. We don't use it, but it does have it.
Oh.
And what happened is these new technologies came out. They were launched. You could buy products for them. And then they slowly disappeared. Why? Because there was a massive existing base of CDs out there, CD players, which people have to buy, and then the media. And you have these two parts that interrelate. And it doesn't do you as a manufacturer any good to release DVD audio CDs if nobody has a player for it.
Plus LimeWire came out.
And that was the bigger factor, right? Yes. Some different technology came in and changed the entire paradigm. People started downloading things instead of buying music on physical media or even copying it themselves. And this is a direct parallel to what has been happening in the camera industry. And as I'm going to try to show you, mirrorless cameras are kind of the DVD audio of the camera world.
Okay.
And smartphones are clearly the LimeWire.
That makes a lot of sense because there are people that are still like, I just like a good old record player.
Yes.
I think you know the parallel I'm drawing.
Everybody's seen the data that DSLR sales year over year, month after month, are plummeting.
Yeah, we pulled up a lot of charts and graphs for this podcast, and all of them told us the same story in graph and chart form, and that's that DSLR sales are plummeting and mirrorless sales are going up.
Yes, so clearly mirrorless will overtake SLRs, right?
Yeah, but you know what I didn't realize from reading all the headlines? You know, all the headlines are so sensational. They're like, DSLRs are dying and mirrorless, the sales are better than ever. That is true, but DSLR sales are still better than mirrorless sales.
Yeah, quite a bit better. And maybe a more important factor is the number of bodies in existence. If you're thinking about making lenses, which is where companies make the most money, you want to make lenses that are compatible with the existing cameras that people own, right?
Yeah, that you have more customers.
So I crunched the numbers for all the camera sales over the last 6 years, and comparing all mirrorless versus all DSLR, it's about 25% mirrorless and about 75% DSLRs. And so we were just in Barcelona. What kind of cameras did you see around most people's necks?
Well, DSLRs.
Yeah, most people, it's consistent with our real world experience. Most people we see have DSLRs around their necks.
Yeah.
If they're using cameras at all.
I was going to say mostly phones, but after that,
you're right.
DSLRs.
So I went for some more validation. Like, what cameras are currently selling, like, today on Amazon? And Amazon, you can go browse cameras and view the top 100 best-selling items. Of those 100 best-selling items, there were 16 unique interchangeable lens cameras, either SLRs or mirrorless cameras.
How many of them were DSLRs?
16 or 12 16 of them were interchangeable lens cameras.
Yeah.
12 of those 16 were SLRs, DSLRs. 4 of them were mirrorless cameras. Of those 4 mirrorless cameras, 3 of them were Sony's and 1 of them was the Canon M50. Like a low-end APS-C.
So that almost exactly correlates to your last chart.
Yes. How many of them were the new Canon and Nikon or Panasonic full-frame mirrorless cameras? 0. They did not make the top 100 best-selling cameras on Amazon.
Didn't even make the top 100.
Yeah, did not make the top 100. And that's the biggest retailer in the United States, which is the biggest market in the world.
So if you are listening and you can't see our fancy little list here, the number 1 selling camera on Amazon is the Canon T7, and then number 2 is the Canon T6.
Yeah, they're like $400 cameras.
I should mention number 3 is the Sony A7 III because that is a mirrorless and it's pretty high up there on the list.
Yeah, and it's a $2,000 body. The Sony mirrorless cameras, no doubt doing great. I'm not going to debate that.
Yeah.
But what I am going to focus on is the potential success of the Canon EOS R and Nikon Z mounts, because I'm not convinced. Okay. So I went looking, like, if those cameras didn't make the top 100 best-selling cameras on Amazon, where were they ranked? And here you have to look at the sales rank against all camera items. So the Canon T7, which was the best-selling camera, was ranked at 125 out of all camera items, including like bags and tripods and filters and stuff. So that is selling very well for the body, the best. The Sony A7 Mark III, the top mirrorless camera, was ranked at 239. The Nikon D750 full-frame DSLR camera was ranked at 483. The Canon EOS R was ranked at number 1800. Now, we have a book that we sell on Amazon, so we know sales numbers and versus the sales rank. And how is it a linear fall off?
Yeah, it doesn't quite work the way that you think it would. So the difference between being the Canon T7 and being number 125 and being the EOS R and being 1800, it's exponentially getting worse. So the EOS R could be selling 1 a week. I mean...
Yeah, we don't know the exact numbers.
We don't know the exact numbers, yeah.
But 1800 is not a good rank.
No, that's not a good rank for us. Our own personal book hasn't been in the top 1,000, all of books, so...
And the Nikon Z7, 4,600. The Nikon Z6, 8,200. The Panasonic S1, 11,000. The EOS RP, 16,000. And the Panasonic S1R, about 18,000. These are very bad rankings. Very, very bad rankings.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to also know where they sell most of their items. Do they sell most of their stuff through B&H or Adorama or...
Yeah, there is no way to collect all the polling data.
No.
It just happens to be that Amazon publishes
Yeah.
these sales ranks. But Amazon is the biggest retailer in the United States.
Absolutely.
I'll also back this up by saying SIPA publishes the Japanese sales rankings for full-frame mirrorless cameras, and Panasonic did not rank. They simply did not list Panasonic sales. Like, there was not enough data for them to even... It's not going good.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about market projections. Tony used his large, dorky mind to just meld together all of these charts and graphs and project which cameras he thinks are going to die off and what he thinks is going to happen.
Yeah.
I took a peek at that, and
It could be really important if you're thinking about upgrading your camera or thinking about buying a new camera.
Yeah,
you do not
definitely.
want to buy into a dead system.
But first, a word from Squarespace. Whether you want a domain, website, or online store, you can make your first move with Squarespace. Tony and I each have some, because I have one, and Tony has 3.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting a fourth.
What is it for?
I can't say, it's secret.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, but Squarespace would be the right place.
I
for
know.
it. Their websites are great.
okay, so we might have we're going to have another Squarespace then.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh, it's like we're welcoming a new Northrup family member into the house. Another Squarespace. And you can try it out. You can see why we're such fanatics for Squarespace for free. No credit card needed. You don't have to remember to cancel. Just go to squarespace.com/Chelsea. You get your 14-day free trial. Once the 14 days is up, bang, that's it. That's it. You can get it if you want, and you can get 10% off with the coupon code Chelsea. So thank you, Squarespace, for the great websites and also for making this podcast possible. Tony,
Thanks, Squarespace.
dig into the nerdiness with me. Let's go there.
These are market projections going from 2018 to 2022. We have data for 2018, so everything that you'll see from 2019 on is a market projection based on a bunch of different sources, but mostly extrapolating based on how sales have been tracking so far. Here's some nerdy stuff for people who are interested in the details of the progressions. I'm assuming cameras will stay in use in the average consumer for a period of 6 years. I am basing the projections on a 3-year moving average of the interchangeable market shrinkage and the mirrorless market growth. So based on how DSLRs and mirrorless cameras have been selling, I've just been averaging it over 3 years.
Okay.
For the full-frame mirrorless market share, I have to assume what portion of the market both Canon and Nikon are going to get. And based on their sales so far, Canon is at 28.8%, mostly against the Sony full-frame cameras who are getting most of the market. And Nikon is at about 12.4%. So that's what I used for my first assumptions.
So that's like your baseline.
So that means in 2018, the only numbers that we have, what I'm interested in is how many of the cameras that people currently own are the Canon and Nikon mirrorless cameras versus the Canon and Nikon SLR cameras. Because this tells us the amount of potential lens buyers for both DSLR lenses and mirrorless lenses, because they don't have necessarily compatible lenses, right? If you make an SLR lens, you can put it on the mirrorless cameras, but Canon and Nikon are making mirrorless lenses now, and you cannot put those on their DSLR lenses. Right now, the number of people who own the mirrorless cameras are substantially less than 1%. We're looking at about 0.2% of Canon and Nikon interchangeable lens camera owners have the mirrorless format. So Canon and Nikon are launching a bunch of mirrorless lenses, right? That means that they can only sell those to about 0.2% of their potential buyers.
Ooh, that's not fun for them.
But they're betting on the long game, right?
Yeah.
They have changed mounts before. It takes many years. 2019, that number, by the end of 2019, that number is going to be about 1%, about 1 out of every 100 potential buyers for their lenses will be on the mirrorless platform. Going out to 2020, we're looking at about 3%, so 1 out of 30. 2021, we're looking at about 6%, and by 2022, I think we'll be at about 10% of potential buyers will be on their mirrorless platforms as opposed to their SLR platforms. So if they make new mirrorless lenses in 2022, they will be excluding 90% of their potential buyers.
But they are. I mean, they have that whole lens timeline that they revealed when they unveiled the Z series.
They are clearly making mirrorless lenses now and marketing them and trying to sell them.
They're ramping it up. So you think there's a possibility that they could change course? Or do you think that they're just going to go all in on this?
Here's what I think. I think if they were to look at these numbers now and make choices in the future, they would not be investing heavily in the mirrorless markets. I know that it takes them probably on the ballpark of 5 years to plan these things. So when we see them launching products today, we know that they've been planning for many years. And if you were to go back to 2012, 2013, it would seem obvious that we would have to transition to mirrorless cameras. But back then, we were much more optimistic about the overall camera market continuing to grow, because it was growing at the time, or certainly not falling off as steeply as it is now. They did not decide to move into the mirrorless market with knowledge of how fast the camera market was going to be falling. And if they did, I think they would continue to produce lenses for DSLRs. This is my most optimistic projection.
That's your optimistic projection?
It's wildly optimistic to think that Canon will get 29% of the market from Sony. That's what they have now. But Sony has not released any new cameras recently. Sony's cameras are old. So Sony's going to fight back and probably steal more of that market share.
Okay.
The Canon CEO said he expects the camera market to plunge by 50% in the next 2 years. Let's go on his estimate. If his estimate is right, by 2022, the number of Canon and Nikon mirrorless cameras in use will be about 5% of the overall Canon and Nikon market. So in 2022, when they're selling mirrorless lenses, they'll be selling to about 1 out of 20 of the potential customers. If I use Canon's estimate and round their market share down to 14% for Canon and 7% for Nikon, these numbers become between 3 and 4% of the overall Canon and Nikon buying market.
In 2022.
In 2022.
Yeah.
No matter how you cut the numbers, the vast majority of customers are going to be using DSLRs and will not be able to make use of the mirrorless lenses.
So new mirrorless sales are good, but overall sales and overall owners have DSLRs, and profits come from selling lenses. So a really profitable item will not be going to enough of their customers.
Yes, there are so few people who could buy their mirrorless lenses that it seems like a terrible investment to continue making mirrorless lenses. And I do not expect that to change for Canon and Nikon. I'm not talking about Fuji or Sony or even Olympus. But Canon and Nikon have this existing DSLR base that they should be serving. It would be smart to serve them. What would you do if you could make a lens that would work for 90 to 95% of your market base, as well as the remaining 5 to 10%, or you could make a mirrorless lens that will only work for 5 to 10% of your market base? What's the better investment?
I mean, I definitely would want to be able to sell to a bigger part of my base, but also I think I'd have to sell the mirrorless stuff for more expensive to make up for it. Maybe they find some niche. Yeah.
So I went into this trying to answer the question, will Canon and Nikon abandon their DSLR lineups and put all of their future investment into mirrorless? Are we going to see new SLRs from them, new DSLR lenses, or are we only going to see new mirrorless products? And I don't know what decision they will make. But if they don't decide to continue developing new DSLR bodies and new DSLR lenses, I think they will be crazy. I think they will be giving away the vast majority of their camera business, and they will probably not be able to make enough sales to make their businesses profitable, because I do not see that people are switching over to the Nikon Z and Canon EOS R bodies. People have DSLRs, they don't necessarily see any need to upgrade, and they still might buy new lenses. So
just to kind of make this a personal anecdote, I am in the process of trying to decide whether or not I should stick with my Nikon D850 or move over to the Sony A7R III. And that is not some artificial drama I'm constructing. You can ask Tony and Justin, I really am flip-flopping every single day about which one I want to stay with. And now that we're talking about it, Nikon's not they're not coming out with any new exciting things for my D850, and I think that's part of what's pulling my attention to the Sony. And if they were offering me really cool new lenses or cool new features, then that might get me to stay with them. So it might be worthwhile for them to just stick with improving their DSLRs for the people that have them.
Corporations aren't like driving a nimble sports car where you just turn the steering wheel and instantly you go down a different course. Corporations are like driving a cruise ship where like you put in some input and then a few minutes later you start to see the boat start to turn a little bit.
Yeah, you'll get there. Hopefully.
Corporations take years to make these sorts of choices. So these Nikon and Canon are only just now seeing that the mirrorless segment for them is flopping. So it might take a couple of years for them to change direction, and they'll finish up whatever mirrorless stuff they have in the pipeline now. And maybe by 2020 or so, they'll realize, oh, you know what? We have these DSLR users out there that we still need to serve. But based on the numbers I've seen, it would be insane for them to invest heavily in mirrorless. I want to establish that camera lineups do die. Samsung NX is dead. Nikon abandoned the Nikon 1 mount. Sony abandoned the A mount. And right now, in this declining market, they're just looking at the bigger camera companies, there are 15 existing mounts. You know, Canon has, I marked it as 3.5 because they have the EOS full frame and they have the EOS APS-C lineups, which require separate lenses. And then they have the M mirrorless APS-C lineup, and then they have the R mirrorless full frame lineup. And all of these require them to develop separate lenses. This is way too many different lens mounts for the existing market to support. So I kind of looked at all this market data and ranked what I thought the likelihood of each of these lens mounts surviving is.
Yeah. And I think watching the video version of this podcast is worth it for this graphic alone.
You like graphics.
I do. I like this one.
I feel like the Sony E mount is safe. Sony seems clear that they're going to continue investing. They have a lot of momentum. They're gaining a whole lot of market share. They seem to be the only camera company that's really growing. I also feel like Fuji, no doubt, is going to continue the X mount. They seem completely committed to it. The Canon EOS DSLR lineup. I think the people at Canon will look at these numbers and realize that they need to continue to support their SLRs. I think that Nikon will continue to do that for the F mount too. I think 3 years ago, they might have been planning to abandon their SLR mounts. But now I think they will continue to make new bodies and new lenses for some time to come. And that's important to know if you're considering upgrading. If you're feeling like you might be forced to upgrade from your SLR to a mirrorless camera, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think you'll continue to benefit from new lenses and new tech, and you can just keep using the DSLR format that you like. And I think that might even be the right choice for a lot of people. However, I definitely don't think Canon is going to abandon the EOS R mount. I think they will continue to develop it. I think they're in it for the long haul. It's been such an old business that I can't imagine them abandoning it. But
you think the Z mount isn't going to fare as well?
No, I'm concerned about Nikon overall. Looking at the financials of their imaging department, their smaller market share, they have a much smaller piece of the pie than Canon does. And the way that they've been struggling with the move to mirrorless. It seemed like a much easier transition for Canon than it was for Nikon. I am concerned about the Nikon Z mount. I think it'll probably survive, but it seems like a little bit of a risky investment to put a lot of money into it at this point, if I were a camera buyer. I'm equally hesitant about the Fujifilm medium format GFX. I'm not sure.
You might be a little biased after your last experience with that.
It's not even that. Like, their new camera is no doubt better, but my concern is the number of potential buyers. Are there going to be enough buyers for it to support Fuji investing further into this sort of high-end base? It's not even about the quality of the camera, it's more about the size of the market. And I'm not sure that the market is going to be there. Micro Four Thirds, I've already kind of announced that I think it's going to die out. I don't think 5 years from now we'll really be seeing new Micro Four Thirds technology being released.
Yeah, and I think people generally agree with you and took that news really well.
Yeah, they were big fans of that. I started out by saying don't shoot the messenger, but people love shooting the messenger.
Hey, it's just more fun that way.
I have serious concerns about the Canon EOS M mount. I think Canon is going to look at their lineup of products and feel like they need to cut somewhere. And I think the most likely place for them to cut is going to be the M mount. And people who are tech geeks will look at it and say, hey, but there's all these technological benefits to it. And that's not really what goes into the product management side of it. You look at, can I make a profit on it? If I don't serve these customers, will I continue to keep them on my other platforms, or will I lose that money? It's mostly a financial decision, not a technological one. So it's nothing against these mounts. I just am concerned about the finances of it. There are a couple of mounts that I feel confident will not be receiving new tech in 5 years. And that's the Pentax SLR mount. Pentax already seems to have dropped it. When I look at Pentax financials, they seriously downplay the imaging department. It seems like the bastard child of Pentax at this point. Like, they seem to be distancing themselves from it. They don't seem to be investing at all.
That's a little rude to Jon Snow. I feel like you can leave that out of it.
My other big one is the Panasonic L Mount. The Panasonic cameras, as we showed, have not been selling well at all. And I just don't think it's going to make it. I would not invest in the Panasonic L Mount at this point.
Okay.
Not if you're happy with what you can buy today. But if you're investing in it long term because you want to keep buying new lenses and bodies for it 10 years from now, I wouldn't do that.
Wow. That was a real doozy, Tony.
Can I just address one thing? I know people are going to say, oh, Tony should stick to photography. He doesn't know anything about this stuff. But I spent a stint as a director of marketing and strategy at a Fortune 100 company. And I did a lot of this type of analysis, like digging through competing financial reports, doing industry analysis. And that was during a crisis, during the tech crisis of 2000 and 2001. You know, I helped bring a company through IPO, and I accurately predicted the downfall of that market and the bankruptcy of my own company. Like, this is in my wheelhouse.
Oh, it certainly is. This is also a hobby for you. You love doing this stuff, and you're good at it.
Yeah, business is like my sports. So I analyze this stuff like crazy. And this is like my fantasy football, you know.
Oh, this is your
me
fantasy
figuring
football.
out who's going to win and who's going to succeed and who's going to fail. I like this stuff.
I do too. I think it's fun. Tony, I think it's fun we can sit here together and play fantasy football with all these camera brands where we then have to go meet the people that work at them. It's a really good idea, and I'm glad we do it. What do you think? Do you guys think that your camera mount is going away? Do you think mirrorless is going to completely overtake DSLR and just grind them into the ground and win? DSLR owners will be crying? Is that what you think? Let us know in the comments below. I'm not going to read them because you guys stress me out, but Tony probably will. And if you want your very own website and you want to use whatever lens mount you have, whatever camera you have to make great pictures and then show them off, go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and try one out for 14 days for free, for true free. And use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. You could also use squarespace.com/Tony, coupon code Tony. I don't recommend that because I have made this a competition for no reason.
Yeah, and stupid Tony just said that your camera mount isn't going to succeed.
Yeah,
so
who does he think he is? Stick to photography, bozo.
All right, thanks, Squarespace.
See you next
Bye.
week-ish.